Space. I'm Kim Kral. I am reporting to you not live from my closet. Hi, guys. Hi. Oh, God, I have not been here for a couple of weeks. And truthfully, I don't really know what's going to come out of my mouth. I went home, as all of you know, to Denver. Home. It's so weird. I can't even really call it home. I like visiting the place that I came from. Like, this is home. Los Angeles is home. The people that are here are more family, you know. And I think the last week I decided not to record because I was really processing what had happened while I was home. And it's so funny. Like, sometimes I wonder if when I go home, it's just because I don't go often enough that I just get like 5 years worth of chaos jammed into 3 days. I think a little bit of column A and a little bit of they are all out of their minds. Like, and God, I really came out of the gate, huh? And you know what's funny? Like, I mean, I'm glad I went. I really am. My sponsor was like, I'm really excited for you to go because you're going to see how much work you've done. And, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I can't share that I don't want to, and a lot of stuff that I'm going to share. And we're going to see how this goes. I've been avoiding coming in here because I know that this is like my honest, safe space. But it's funny that it's my honest, safe space and it's projected to the world. I will say, oh, man. I mean, I don't even know how to, I'm still processing, man. There's just a lot of chaos, a lot of insanity, a lot of made up stuff, a lot of lying. And it's weird because I would hear every side of every story. And it was just like, all of you aren't accepting any sort of blame and making up weird stuff. I don't know. I don't even like, I was worried about going to the party with all the Trump supporters who weren't vaccinated. I don't even know if I said this on here because I was worried I didn't want to upset anybody. But like, yeah, I was told that there was a birthday party I was invited to, and I was told that everyone there was a massive Trump supporter and that no one was vaccinated. So I like worried about it for a long time because I was like, I think I talked to you guys about this, but I was like, this is just like one small bizarre lie. Jesus Christ. So I was worried about it because I was just like, I wouldn't go to a party where everyone was unvaccinated here in LA. Why would I do that there? And I know what COVID does to my body, and it is not a picnic, my friend. It was like something I grappled with for a while. And then I finally asked the guy who was throwing the party, and he goes, yeah, we're all vaccinated. And I was like, oh, and then the other person who said they weren't was like, no, they're not. And it was just literally like, and I got there and all the quote Trump supporters sat around. I don't even know if they were at all. Honestly, no one was wearing Trump flags. No one was doing any of that shit. It was just a nice birthday party. And the people that I was told weren't vaccinated, one of them goes, quote, and this is the main quote Trump supporter. He's just so crazy. I really came out of the gate. The good news is I don't think any of my family is going to listen to this because a few of them sat me down and told me that they will never buy my book, they will never read my book, and they don't support anything I do. They didn't say that last part, I don't support anything you do, but literally there were conversations where people sat me down and they were like, I will never read or buy your book. And I was like, Jesus Christ. I don't even know. But so the Trump, so I don't even know who I'm fucking protecting because like they do not support this or me. And by they, it's not a full blanketed they because I know a few of you do listen and you're exempt from that. If you're listening to me right now, you have my book. I mean, not that like you in order to show me love, you have to buy my book, but like, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, well, let me go to the Trump. So we're all sitting around the table and one of the main quote Trump supporters, I'm using massive air quotes because I don't even know if the dude's a Trump supporter. He says, I just don't understand why people won't get vaccinated. Like, I don't get why people don't believe in science. And I was like, oh man, I was told for like months you had the opposite opinion. It's just madness, man. And I'm grateful. I'm really, really, really grateful that it was really bad for me growing up because if it was just like not that bad, you know what I mean? Like if it was just like, it's not that bad. I used to listen to, I have these tapes, these Al-Anon CDs that my stepdad gave me years ago. And it's a woman in Al-Anon. If you don't know what Al-Anon is, I was in Al-Anon for a really long time. It's for friends and family of alcoholics and addicts, right? And Al-Anon's great. Al-Anon, helped me have boundaries. Al-Anon saved my fucking life. Like, I love Al-Anon, but how many more times can I say Al-Anon? But it wasn't enough. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like my shit was so bad that I honestly thought when I was going to Al-Anon, everyone there was like, oh, should we all take a drink every time I say Al-Anon? Al-Anon. Every time I go there, everyone was just like, oh, this place changed my life. And like, I was going to die without it. And believe me, Al-Anon got me, which is, I think that's irony that the Al-Anon program, I'm telling you to drink. Okay. Al-Anon gave me the courage to stand up to my dad, to assert boundaries. And then when he wouldn't listen to said boundaries, to cut him out of my life. And so I'm grateful for Al-Anon, but I remember being in there and just like, thinking something was really fucked up about me because everyone there seemed like that thing just, fixed them. And I just thought, maybe I'm just too fucked up to be fixed. Maybe this is just as good as I'll get. Like wow, it's 6 minutes and I'm already off and running. I thought maybe this is just as fixed as I'll ever be. Like I'll always be really broken because of what, my dad did to me or my mom's, stuff. I mean, it's interesting. My mom didn't do anything to me. My mom was just an addict, alcoholic, bipolar, all that stuff. She didn't do anything to me. My dad did do stuff to me. I do think that he was mentally ill and, an alcoholic himself. But if you're new to the show, my dad sexually abused me. Oh, that was another conversation that I got to have a few times. A few people sat me down and let me know that they talk a lot about what happened to me, and that most of them have all decided that though they don't believe me, they will love me anyway. What do you say to that? Thank you. I really appreciate that you will love me anyway. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, that's why I couldn't come on here. I don't even know if I'm telling you. Oh, the Al-Anon. We'll get to Al-Anon and ACA, but, and I just like stared at a wall for like 3 days. Thankfully, I had a lot going on when I came back. So normally I got to like hit the ground running. But like with Al-Anon, I thought, everyone seemed to be getting fixed in there. And I did the steps. I made amends. I went through a fourth step. I had a sponsor. I went to a couple meetings a week. I was a secretary. Like I was in Al-Anon, right? But like there was always something. I was still fucking broken inside. I just was broken. And I just, after like 10 years of Al-Anon, I just thought, I guess this is just how I'll be. Like, I've done all this work. I've been to therapy. I cut out the problem. And like, I guess it's just how I'll be. And then one time I was in a meeting and the speaker brought up ACA and God, and someone in Al-Anon, dude. And that's the other thing. Like, there's just so many rules in there. And like, it's coming from someone who, if you breaking rules growing up felt like you would die, right? Like it was not a thing that you did in my household, break rules. Like you towed the line, you walked on eggshells because my dad was a terrifying fucking guy, right? And so I'm anxious around breaking rules. So I'm in this meeting and and the speaker brings up ACA, and then this fucking broad goes, outside issue. This woman had a meltdown every week, every time somebody said anything remotely not related to Al-Anon, which is so fucked up, which also you look at that woman and you're like, yo, you have a lot to go work through too. Because if this is how you're behaving and you're like newcomers would bring up their job and she'd be like, that's an outside issue. It's like, well, this person doesn't know that you're not allowed to talk about your jobs in here, Mona. I don't know if her name is Mona. I'm not outing her. Also, I don't know her last name, so who cares? But like, I'm grateful that guy brought up ACA because I went up to him after the meeting and I was like, hey, this isn't an ACA's Adult Children of Alcoholics. And I was like, this is an ACA meeting, right? And he goes, no, this is an Al-Anon meeting with an adult child focus. So we mostly people who raised in alcoholism, this is where they come. Like Al-Anon has different focus meetings where it's, parents of alcoholics or, spouse of alcoholics, men only meetings. And this one was for kids who grew up in the alcoholism. And he was like, but ACA is a whole separate meeting or a whole separate program. It's adult children of alcoholics and dysfunction. I think that dysfunction should really be added in there more than it is, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, I didn't grow up in alcoholism. I had a fucked up childhood, but no one in my house drank. Like, you qualify for it too, dude. You can go to ACA because it's alcoholics and dysfunction. And I think sometimes when people are like, oh, where did they ask me, where I got this knowledge of, I'll say something and they'll be like, that's so smart. And it's not me, it's just program, right? And I'll be like, oh, it's ACA. And they're like, oh, well, I had nowhere near the childhood you had. And I'm like, well, yeah, mine was a little sketchy. So funny. One of my family members that I just adore, and I wish I would have been able to spend more time with her. She didn't know anything about my mom's stuff. She was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I know. Everyone thinks that if I talk about my mom, I'm fucking saying something horrible about their beloved Tom. It's just so crazy. It's so crazy. But the guy was like, how he described, he's like, Al-Anon helps me deal with the world, like now, currently. Like, it has a really good toolbox for the world. ACA goes in, finds the original wound, rips off the Band-Aid, rips off the scab, and helps it heal. And there's a lot of people in Al-Anon that would, are you guys all drunk now? Because everyone's taking a drink every time I say Al-Anon. And I'm an advocate of it, dude. I really am. It saved my life. It's helped a lot of people. It just wasn't enough for me. My shit was really bad and I needed something more. And in the Al-Anon meetings, I remember when I first started going to ACA, I would tell people I was going to ACA, and one girl was like, oh yeah, my sponsor says I should try that, but like, it's really hard. And that brings back to the original point. It's not that bad. And it was that bad for me. So years ago, my stepdad gave me I got to take a sip of water. Some people edit that out. I don't. If I had to edit out every little like gulp or breath over the last, like, what are we at, 85 episodes, there would be no crawl space. I would be like, no, too hard. Don't care enough to go through and edit out all my sippings of water. I also came from live radio, right? The last show I had was live radio. So you drank water and there was like a half a set, whatever. Whatever. So my stepdad gave me the Al-Anon CDs, drink, and where this woman went through the 12 steps and just talks about it. It's fucking powerful. It was awesome. And it was also really cool because like my stepdad's in recovery, and it was like a cool thing he got me, that it was like, oh, we have this, this language, this bond we have, it was a cool present because it just made me feel seen. Something I don't get a lot of when I'm home. And if I do, it's not great attention. God, I'm so happy to be back in Los Angeles. Going home for me is like going to IKEA. Hear me out. I hate IKEA. I hate it. But every 4 or 5 years or so, I forget that I don't like IKEA. And I'm like, it can't really be that bad. I'll just go to IKEA. And the second I get into IKEA, I'm stuck there for 5 days. It's awful. And that's what it's like. Like when I bought the tickets, I was like, 4 days is probably way too short. Should I stay longer? Day 2, I was like, I want to get the fuck out of here. And it's hard to say that because I love those people. I really love those people. And but there's a lot of chaos and a lot of dysfunction, and generational dysfunction is real. Generational trauma is real. And if, people, it's just so weird watching the generations now unfold now that I'm older, and watching it and being like, holy fucking shit. Like, if you don't look at your shit, you're gonna repeat it. And that's what my parents did, and that's what their parents did, and that's just what happens. And it's so fun when I came home, I read a bunch of quotes, just like, how the world gives you what you need when you need it. A lot of them, a couple quotes by Denzel Washington, and he was just like, your family will literally talk shit about you while you're breaking these generational bonds and traumas and dysfunction. This shit's not for the weak. And it's not. I go home and I take a lot of flack. It's not, and not only that, like, it's not just them. It's, I go home and it's the belly of the beast, dude. I go in and it's where all of the bad stuff happened. You know, I walked into my cousin's house and he has inherited most of the furniture I grew up with. So it's just like, oh, there's the China hutch. There's the fucking, I can't even think right now, but like, it's just a lot of ghosts, and I'm not grounded there. I'm not myself. I can feel my body going back to being a child of that hyper-vigilant, like fight or flight, you know? When you grow up in that kind of environment early on, you don't really get to have I never knew what a baseline normal was. It was just my body was always in fight or flight mode. And in fact, fight or flight became so comfortable that when I wasn't in fight or flight, I remember as a kid, I would be sitting there and I would be like, why am I not freaked out? Like I would, as a 10-year-old, would ask myself, I'm not freaked out, something's wrong. I was concerned when there was no chaos. And then I would sit there and list the shit I needed to be worried about. And then I would get back into my fight or flight and I'd feel safe in that. I felt safer in the chaos. And I don't do that anymore. But when I go back home, and it's not home, when I go visit Denver, where I'm from, my body just goes back to that. So it's not just their dysfunction and chaos and all that. It's also I'm on edge and I'm anxious and I'm trying to find a way to be grounded. And I will say that next time I go, I get a hotel. I need my own space every night to sit down in a space that's mine, that I don't have to be like quiet while I'm doing this thing. Or if I wake up, it's like if I wake up early and I want to do some writing, I have to worry about, various, depending on where I'm staying, kids, dogs, the whole thing. And it's just like next time there's a hotel. And I got some family members that aren't doing super well. So I think that it unfortunately, I may have to go back sooner than I would like. But I looked up hotels and I was like, what the fuck? They're like $100. That's like cheaper than like buying everyone dinner because they let me stay at their fucking place. You know what I mean? Because I'm just so uncomfortable there. But so my stepdad gave me those Al-Anon tapes, and this woman said she was in the airport and she ran into this woman who she came up in Al-Anon with, and who had kind of vanished from the program. And that happens a lot in the rooms. People come and go. I can't. I will never graduate from that. If I don't go to a meeting or check in with my sponsor or do my daily work, shit goes south really quickly for me. Like my brain, my hardwiring brain is dysfunction and chaos. And if I don't actively work to reverse that, and that sucks. Like I'm tearing up right now because it's just like, that makes me sad, but it also makes me grateful because I wouldn't be who I am without that, like I wouldn't. And I like this person. Couldn't always say that, but I love this person. Yeah. So this woman said she was I got a bubble in my throat to hear it. And she was in the airport and she ran into a woman she used to be in Al-Anon with. And she was like, oh my God, hey. And she's like, where have you been? I haven't seen you in the rooms in a long time. And the woman goes, oh, John died. And John was her husband, who was her alcoholic, which sent her to Al-Anon. And she goes, oh. And she goes, now that he's gone, it's just not that bad. And the woman in the CDs, she goes, and that's fine for her. But for me, it was that bad. And not only that, but I don't want to live a life that's just not that bad. I want to live a life that's awesome. But that's the thing. Like, I think where I grew, I'm so grateful that it was that bad for me, that it was so bad growing up that I had to get the fuck out of there. Otherwise I would have died. Because if not, I would still be there, just, living out the generational shit, the stuff that we just pick up that's not even ours, but we just pick up and then we pass it along to our kids. And I'm just watching it. And that's something I'm really grateful for. Usually when I go back there, I internalize it all as it's my fault, that I did something wrong, that I'm bad, I'm not enough. If I was more lovable, pretty successful, funnier, nicer, whatever. If I was just this more of this one characteristic, maybe this wouldn't be so bad when I go back. And this time I just watched it all and it was just detached and like it was just like, this has nothing to do with me. And when one of family members sat me down and told me that they would never, I'm being vague with like pronouns and family member because, you know, I'm still debating on how much I want to just unleash on this. Because I do love those people and I know they're just dysfunctional and they had no other shot or no other choice, you know, like I had no other choice. And I'm just so fucking grateful. They're just so grateful. And that's also, I left. And so when my one family member sat me down to explain to me that not only did they not buy the book, they don't plan on ever buying my book. Oh, by the way, buy my book. I have a book, Confessions of a Recovering Party Girl. And I hear it's really good. I mean, I love it, and that's wild to love your own art after it's out there to still like everyone, you know, I mean, you make something, you pour everything into it and then it gets out there and you're like, oh, I should have done this, this, and this. I mean, there are a few things I wish I would have done and I'm going to still do them. But this person is explaining to me that not only that they would never buy my book, but they'll never read it, they'll never buy it, and it's so funny because I was just like, you know what, that's fine. I was like, honestly, the only people who haven't bought it are people who are actively wishing I fail or my family, and they were like, why are you doing this right now? Why are you ruining the trip? And I'm like, I'm not ruining the trip. You sat me down and was basically like, I'll never support you, and you expect me to just go, okay, thank you for being so honest with me, right? Like it's just like. So she flipped out and they flipped out, whatever and I was just like, you know what? You're right. I'm going to go to bed. Night. And I went to bed and I laid down and I thought about it. And I was like, they may never buy my book. And there are family members, by the way, who have and bought signed copies and bought it right away. Again, if you are listening to this, you know who you are. And I love you and appreciate you. And I love the other people too. It's not that I don't. It's a tough it's a tough pill to swallow. And one other person was like, why are you taking it so personally? I was like, well, that is personal. That's personal. Why would I not take? And honestly, I don't, because it's like, you guys are fucked up, man. You're just fucked up. I would, if any one of them wrote a book, I would buy it right away. And if I didn't have time to read it, I wouldn't be like, just so you know, I'm not going to read the book. Okay. Like I just wouldn't, like, it's mind-boggling, but it's not personal. But then I was laying there and I was just like, who cares? My buddy Roger bought 3 or 4 copies to give away to friends and keep for himself. My best friend Katie did the same. Best friend Rain from college did the same. She has the one that has forward spelled correctly. She has the one forward spelled incorrectly, and she has the ebook. And then her husband bought one for his receptionist, secretary, office manager. I don't know what they're called anymore. And I don't want to sound like an old white guy that's like, you can't call anybody anything anymore, because that's not what I mean. I'm trying to be respectful, but I cannot remember. I think it's office manager, whatever. But he bought one for one of his employees that works. And I was like, so this one person's not going to buy my book. Who gives a fuck? And that was the other gift of this trip. I didn't internalize it. I didn't take it personally. I did have to process it. I did have to do some filling up of my own cup. You know, when I got home, it was like, got to fill up my own cup again because it's fucking depleted. That was a lot. But I realized something that I guess it's never dawned on me. I will never get their approval. I will never get the love I want from them. I will never, ever. That's it. And I can just let that go now. And it's fucking freeing. And that's why with the podcast, I was like, do I just unleash? Because it's like, who gives a fuck? But also, you know, I want to be respectful and keep my own side of the street clean and not air dirty laundry or names or anything like that. But I was like, and that was, I mean, I cried really. I mean, now I'm a little bit more processed and grounded in it. But my whole life, all I wanted was for them to tell me I was good enough, you know, tell me I was funny enough, smart enough. And you know, there's a few, obviously, again, this sounds so blanketed to like everybody ever in my family. People who it applies to, if they ever listen to this, which they've assured me they never will, they know who they are. And I'll never get it. Another wild thing that happened, I mean, that just real quick, like, can we just sit with that? Like, just all of my life, all I wanted was that kind of love. Like, I remember something happened a couple years ago and I couldn't make it. And I was like, there was like a family event and I couldn't make it. And my inner kid goes, well, next time that happens, maybe you'll be famous by then and they'll love you then. Literally this voice I couldn't, and I was like, oh my God, I've always thought if I was just this, like, if I write a book, maybe they'll love me. If I do this, maybe they'll love me. If I'm skinny enough, smart enough, pretty enough, don't drink that much, drink with them, smoke, don't smoke. You know what I mean? If I drive them everywhere, if I call and check on everybody all the time to make sure everyone's okay, maybe I will finally fucking be enough for them. And I will never, after this trip, I was like, I will never be enough for them. The fact that the conversation is had quite often about my abuse, that they don't believe me, but they'll love me anyway. When I was told that, I was just like, I was told that several times actually. And I was like, I lost everything when I came forward about my dad. Everything. Like, I mean, not like I didn't lose my home or whatever, but like I lost everything, my life as I knew it. And I had to build back brick by brick. And I had to I almost fucking killed myself. Like literally, like there's an episode called, I'm really glad you're here. I posted it on my Instagram a couple weeks ago. If you want to check it out, if you're just like popping in during this, but I talk about my suicidal times, and ideologies and, all that, and antidepressants and all that stuff. But I walked through fire to get here. I lost everything, and they have the audacity. Like, what would I have to gain by saying that? It's all freeing. It's a lot to process. I'm still kind of processing it. I am crying quite a bit, but that's just grief, and it's important to grieve. You can tell when it's like dramatics, or not dramatics, but I guess dramatics. You can tell when you're crying is just like, not grief. You can tell the difference. I'm grieving a lost childhood, a lost ideal, a lost picture. Growing up, all I wanted was just this perfect family. So I worked so hard to just be so close to everybody and love everybody and be, perfect and loved. And it's just, I'll never get it. And that's okay. Because one, I am unbelievably, undeniably giving it to myself now. And I don't need it from anybody else. And I couldn't have said that a year ago. Or maybe 2 years ago. I don't know. Time isn't real anymore. We're all on the same plane, right? Planet. So, we're all on the same planet. That like time's all chaos. Like March 2020 feels like yesterday and also 25 years ago, right? But I couldn't have said that I undeniably love myself and I give myself that approval. And when I entered into ACA, one of the first meetings, I heard a guy say, "This program has given me an unshakable sense of self." And I wrote that down and I was like, I want that. I want an unshakable sense of self. And the only way to get that is to love yourself fucking unconditionally. And I do that now. And I don't need their love or approval or high opinions or whatever the fuck and then also right before I left, I finished the 12 steps of adult children of alcoholics in dysfunction. I finished 12 steps of ACA. They promise you a spiritual awakening at the end of it. And I gotta say, I think that my take from it is, yes, there was one, but it wasn't just like I read the chapter and, did the meditation and was like, oh my God, I found God. But like reading the chapter, I looked at the whole process of getting to where I am right now and all the miracles and love and rejection and losing people and finding out that people I really loved may not be that great of people, and the shedding of toxic people, the shedding of toxic behaviors of myself, all of it. I don't know. The only way I could describe it is the call is coming from inside the house. I said that to my sponsor. She laughed. If you don't like the horror movie, it's not really that funny because it is a horror movie, but like the ruby slippers, you had the capability to go home the whole time. And when I had that, I realized, so I don't know if you guys know, I think I've probably told you. So, well, my dad died, but he did have kind of a cool death in terms of like what he did with his remains and his body and stuff. He One thing that I appreciate that he taught me in terms of spiritual belief is that he was like, this isn't me. The body's not me. You know, my body is just going to be a dead body when I'm gone. So he donated his body to the local university in Nebraska, which is wild. It's called Creighton University, and that's what my papa's name was, and my cat's middle name. And if I ever have a kid, I will name it Creighton, or there will be Creighton somewhere in there. That guy is. I mean, I dedicated my book to him and Dorothy. He and Dorothy, his wife, my grandma. Everything good inside me came from those two people. Everything. The moon set and rose with me, according to those two people. They gave me that love and approval. But my dad donated his body to Creighton University, and because he was like, he's like, I had all the cancer, I might as well, maybe somebody will be able to help. Maybe they'll be able to help somebody. And so the ashes take a little bit of time to get, right? Oh my God, this is a wild story. Ready? Fucking buckle up. Oh God. Okay. So, they promised the ashes were going to take a year or so to get, cause they were going to embalm the body a lot. And then, they said that to me. My dad and I went to what I think was the mortuary, but it was a small town in Nebraska. So it wasn't just a mortuary. It was also a gift shop and a diner, I believe. Like everywhere in those small towns, if you've ever traveled around the country into these small towns, it is like, here is a big building. You can bury a body in here. You can shower in here. Need a toothbrush. Also, we have all these cute little knickknacks. Oh, and an Arby's. That's like every small town I've ever been to. It's just wild. I mean, that's one of my favorite parts about small towns. And so we go in there, and my dad is signing away papers, signing away to his, giving his body to this university. And the guy was like, so we are going to embalm the body. And it's so wild to be listening to a guy talk about a person's body to the person's body, like to the person whose body they're talking about, but calling it the body, not your body. Because like me, sorry, water, I just swallowed grossly in the thing. Like me and like me and like my dad, this guy knew that like after my dad died, the body would just be a body. It wouldn't be Tom. It wouldn't be anything but just a meat and bones, gross, and blood, a lot of blood. Just kidding. I don't know why I said that. But so he was like, we're going to have to embalm the body quite a bit. And my dad looks at me, and he was just such an interesting, I hadn't seen my dad in like 5 years, right? And in some ways we fell back into patterns, not the sexual abuse stuff, but I reverted back to being terrified of him. I didn't shower the whole time I was in Nebraska saying bye to him. I just couldn't do it. Couldn't be naked in that house, even though there were locks and everything. Oh God, man. Sorry, and that's a lot to share. I share a lot on this, so buckle up. I love it. Sometimes I get emails, mostly from dudes, that'll be like, your podcast is really funny, except for when you get really dark all of a sudden. That's the podcast. If you don't want to listen to it, listen to some always funny podcast. My podcast is not that. It's dark, it's funny, it's real fucked up. And I talk about pooping my pants sometimes. And I like hearing your pooping pants stories. I have so many poop scoops, but I have my own, so okay, we'll get to it. But so the guy was like, embalm the body. And my dad and I hadn't seen each other in years, and we're standing there, and he looks at me, and I know he could tell that it was, that's a lot. It was a lot of real conversations in those few days. And he looks at me, and he was like, you're all right with sitting here listening to this? And I was like, yeah, I don't believe that will be you anymore. So the ashes didn't come for a year, and my dad doesn't have a gravestone, and he didn't have a funeral. He said that he didn't really. He was like, funerals. He's like, I don't know. I don't really, it's not a religious guy. I loved this, but this is part of my dad that I loved. And I know I was at a meeting the other day, and this guy was talking about his stepdad, who was really abusive and who died. And he was like, that guy destroyed a lot of lives with his abuse. But this funeral is going to have a lot of love and a lot of sadness and a lot of trauma to work through. And he just goes, and that's just part of being human. That's what it all is. It's just part of it. Not that like I excuse what my dad did, but on the contrary, right? in some ways, that guy ruined my life. In some days, what he did to me actually has become my greatest asset. I'm able to read situations and people, and I'm able to be there for people in a way I wouldn't have been able to had I not experienced what I had. But he didn't have a funeral. He was like, have a party, don't have a party, do whatever you want. I won't be here. Just do whatever you got to do to get through this. And he doesn't have a tombstone. And I've told this before, and I'm going to tell it again. Because sometimes I repeat stories. That is for a family member who said not nice things about that too. I don't think he listens to this either. But maybe I'm still reeling from the trip. There's just a lot, and a lot of unkind things were thrown my way. But he doesn't have a gravestone, and I was like, no. And this is important for the story. I have my childhood dog's ashes in my closet. It's not above me. There's another closet in my apartment it's in. I truly don't know what to do with them. And now I've had them for like 15 years that I'm like, I think I just die with Candy's ashes. I think that's just how it goes. So he was like, I was like, no gravestone, huh? And he goes, why? What's the point of a gravestone? And I get that. I think gravestones are kind of silly. But I was like, thought about it for a minute. And I was like, in my experience, gravestones are, for your family to show up every couple of years, hold hands and awkwardly cry in silence. And my dad goes, when you get my ashes, you can stand around those every couple of years and awkwardly cry if you want. And I was like, well, I have Candy's ashes. Do you care if I throw them in there to kill two birds with one stone? And he thought for a minute, he goes, Candy was a good dog. I'm all right with that if that's what you want to do. But so the ashes came a year or so later, and my aunt and uncle asked me what I wanted to do. And I was like, my dad had this 9th hole. He was a golfer, and he had this 9th hole on the course in Lakewood, Colorado that I guess he could just never, he just had, I don't know the terminology about golfing, but he did really bad on that, really poorly on that hole. And they were like, well, we told him when he died that we'd spread his ashes on that hole, on that golf course, just so that part of him would always be in that hole, and maybe he fucking would get it back the hole. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, I love that. Can you wait for me? And they were like, you want us to wait for you? And I was like, I want you to wait for me. And they were like, you sure? And I was like, I'm sure. I must have told them 450 times, please wait for me. Please wait for me. Please wait for me. They did not wait for me. I was so angry, so hurt. Because it's just like this last trip. It's just like, I am a fucking afterthought. And I'm a fun punchline, and I'm a fucking afterthought. And they didn't wait. And I was so angry. And I called my cousin, the one I'm really close to. By the way, none of this, she's been, a big support while I'm talking. She's let me vent all this out. This is not her at all. But I called her, and she walked, let me vent. And she was like, yeah, we're all kind of upset because they did it with just the 4 of them and not the rest of the family. No one was there. And then my Aunt Amy died. I was so angry. And then she died, and she was one of the ones that spread the ashes. And it just didn't seem, this woman was like my mother. This is important for the story. She died. She was like my mother. Her name was Amy. Important for the story because we're about to cut to a few days ago. God, so fucked up. So she died. And then, I was so devastated by that death that spreading the ashes, it just didn't really seem to matter. It didn't matter. It was like, whatever. And then, I before ACA, I joined ACA, and I got really, really, really mad. For the first time in my life, I got really mad about what my dad had done to me and about how everyone seemed to want to cover it up. I was pissed, First time, that's one of the things that they don't tell you when you go into ACA until, you're in it. It's like, oh, you're going to be really mad for a while. I was really mad about puzzles for a long time. As I didn't know, I never was bought a puzzle. I never did that kind of stuff as a kid because my parents were too busy, watching porn, abusing me, and doing drugs, being in jail. I don't know what name it, but like we never did any of that kind of stuff. And so I was really mad about puzzles. I mean, like irrationally mad. Now I did a puzzle. I bought a puzzle at Disneyland a couple weeks ago. My plan is to do it soon. I just haven't had time. But like you fill your own cup up, right? You become your own loving parent. Like shit that I wish my parents did for me, I'm now doing for myself, and it's fucking magical. But like, I got really mad at my dad, and I was like, I don't want those fucking ashes. Fuck those ashes. I don't care. Throw them away. Don't throw them away. You send them to Los Angeles. I'm going to find the grossest dumpster in Los Angeles, and I'm going to throw them in there, and I'm going to dump like piss water on them, right? So angry. And then I kept working the steps, and then I found forgiveness. I found forgiveness to him, to myself, to my family, all of it. You know, I forgave all of it. And I was just checking the mirror to see how I looked. That's so. I stopped for a minute, but I just forgave all of it. But I still didn't want those ashes. It was just like, oh, it doesn't matter. And then right as I finished my steps, I was doing some meditating, which is the thing I do now regularly. I used to do like the meditating where I would write, and that was like how I shut off my brain. But now I'm like, and I was doing some meditating, and I heard, you need to spread those ashes. You need those ashes back. I need those ashes back. I realized that like my spiritual belief, as I said, is not, I don't believe there's a heaven or a hell. Believe me, if there was a hell, Tom would for sure be rotting in it, right? I don't think you can put your fingers in a little girl and not go to hell. That is not a funny joke to anybody unless you've been sexually abused. If you've been sexually abused, you find my humor hilarious, probably, or you're still angry and you're working through it, whatever. But know that one day, okay, I don't need to keep defending my own joke on my own podcast, but like if there was a hell, Tom would for sure be rotting in it, right? But I don't believe that. I think we're all spiritual beings living in a human experience. And I think when my dad was down here living in a human experience, he was given a lot of generational trauma, a lot of mental illness that my family doesn't, not all of my, they're starting to break through that, but won't admit a mental illness is real. I think something probably happened to him. Either way, I think he was all pinched up down here and fucked up. But I don't believe that now. I've talked about that. I'm closer to my dad than I ever was now. I talk to him all the time. And I hear him. My old sponsor actually broke up with me over that. She told me I needed to go to therapy because I sounded crazy. But if you've never lost anybody that close to you like that, in your life, I talk to dead people all the time. I've lost a lot of people in my life, and I hear them too, but I'm connected. And my guess is if you're still listening to this podcast this far in, you're probably not going, what? She's crazy. But I don't know. Regardless of what he did down here, he deserves to be freed somehow. And dumping his ashes somewhere feels like a symbolic freedom. And also, I deserve closure. I didn't get a funeral. I didn't get any of that stuff. We had a couple of parties, but those parties weren't closure. They probably were for the people who went. But as I said, when I'm in Denver or in that environment, I'm hyper vigilant. And also every move I made at those parties was watched by almost everybody in the room. People who didn't know me, people who grew up with me, trying to figure out why the fuck I cut my dad out of my life. And back then I chose to not tell anybody why. That it's true. Victims don't come forward for a long time. It's really scary because, case in point, I came forward and a lot of people in that world either deny it or justify it. Pretty much straight across the board. And, that's hard when you haven't worked through your trauma. But now I have, and I know that has nothing to do with me. And I also don't think of it as black and white. And I know that when people are doing the justifying and denying or whatever, they think of it as black and white, that they couldn't still love that guy, even though he did bad things. And I think there's gray. I loved that guy. I wish that he didn't do the stuff that he did. It was obviously, that I loved that guy. And that was really hard to work through. But I was like, I deserve some kind of symbolic freedom of all of this. And so I went back home and I told them all I wanted the ashes. My uncle may come out here to do it with me, and he's one of the ones that is just lovely. I love him so much, and I would love it if he came out here. I could get to know him outside of that environment. That's the other thing. Like, they don't know me. They know hypervigilant, talkative, freaked out Kim. That's like, I'm sweaty and nervous and I blah, blah, blah. And I have to just always be on because got to make them laugh. Got to do this. Got to be on my toes. Got to make sure they love me. Da, 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 da. Not grounded. And I would, and he was close to my dad in the end. But I also told him that we're not, Tom died like 5 years ago or 6 years ago. And it's like, I'm not waiting another 6 years to get rid of these things. Right. But it's so funny. I get the ashes and they're like at the back of one of their garages under like 5 boxes. And I'm like, God, for a dude you all worship so much, you sure are showing him very little respect, right? Like for a dude, they're all like, he is like the king. They like keep his ashes, just so insane. But I got the ashes the other day. This is fun. And I've turned it into almost a new bit, which is exciting. So FedEx comes, right? FedEx comes and I call him up and I open the door and I was like, I am not expecting a package. And he goes, oh, I don't know. And then I looked at it and my cousin calls me Uncle Kim. While I'm having their kids call me Uncle Kim because my Uncle Steve used to call me Uncle Kim as a kid because I called him Uncle Steve, right? And so I was like, oh, I love that. So I'm like, can they, because that's what Uncle Steve always called me. And that's what's confusing about all those feelings, that I have from the trip and all the chaos and dysfunction. I love those people. But I don't need them to love me anymore. And I know they love me, but I don't need them to approve of me or validate me anymore. And that's, I think, what I mean by the love, A lot of love is conditional, and I don't need to do those conditions anymore. I'm filling up my own cup. But so I was like, I saw Uncle Kim and I go, oh, that's my dead dad. And the FedEx guy was like, what? And I was like, well, not like his limbs and shit. It's like, it's his, and I was like, it's not like his teeth in like a cooler. And he just stared at me and I stared at him. And then I just grabbed the box and was like, have a good day. And I shut the door. And I opened the box and the ashes are there. And then my cousin's uncle, my Aunt Amy's brother, passed away like 3 or 4 years ago. And there was a snow globe he wanted me to have. I collected snow globes, and there was a Hollywood snow globe. So my dead Uncle Brad left me. So here's the box. I opened the box. It was a fucking crazy. So I opened the box, and there's my dead dad, and then the snow globe from my dead Uncle Brad. Uncle quotes. He's not actually my uncle, but. And then my Aunt Amy, who is like a mother to me, who died 2018. I don't know what year it is. She left me a necklace. And I was just like, Jesus Christ. I am so glad I'm healed when I open this. Because a few people messaged me and they're like, are you going to be okay? Like, I know it's a lot to process. And it was just like, no, I've worked. The beauty of working through this shit is that like, you don't react all the time. You're not like a fucking live wire. I was a live wire. And that's how my cousin, my one I'm really close to lives in Portland. That's how she described my experience going home. It's like a live wire. It is like, that's how I was too. When I hadn't processed all this shit, I was a reactor. I was reacting to everything. Just got to make sure I survive somehow. Got to make them laugh. Got to steal that. Got to not steal. I don't know what I'm saying, but got to just anything to be safe. And it's so weird. I open this box. First of all, I open up the box and they had used some of the ashes, right? So like they had the ashes were in a bag and they had duct taped the top. And so I pulled out the ashes and not a handful, but I would say a fourth of a handful fell on my lap. And I was like, put the ashes back in the box. Put them back in the box. I don't want my dead father's all over me now. Do I vacuum this up? What do I do? What the fuck? But I'm looking in the box and it's like, it doesn't even have his name on it. It's number, it literally says number C759 or whatever it is, but it doesn't even, and then the name of the cremation place. And I'm just looking at these ashes and I'm just like, man, I cannot believe a man that in all intents and purposes, I think like its intents and purposes. But people make fun of the other one so much that I get paranoid that I'm wrong. I'm always paranoid I'm wrong. And that's one of the fun things about growing up in a dysfunctional environment is that someone tells me I murdered a dude. I'm like, yeah, I probably did. And I'm always wrong. I don't have that anymore, but that's my baseline. And I got to actively work against that. But I was just like, God, this man that ruined my life in some ways. And I don't want to sound like I'm walking around going, my life was ruined. My life is beautiful and I'm happy and I love it. And I know I had to go through that to become who I am now. I understand that. But like, no one should have ever endured what that man did to me as a child. No one ever. I wouldn't wish that on someone I hated. And this man that terrified me my whole life, even after I cut him out of my life, I was terrified of him. Fits in this tiny fucking box in this little bag. And it just, I don't know. And there's a song I love quite a bit called At the Bottom of Everything. And it's an old song. Not old, but like 4 or 5 years old. I don't mean like oldies, but I mean like I didn't just discover it, but there is a part in it that says, I found out I am really no one. It's like I'm happy just because I found out I'm really no one. And I love that song. That song is basically like, to me, it's the end of the human experience, where at the end of it, you look at all of it and it's just like, there's a line in it that says, we look into a crystal ball and only see the past. It's just such a fucking brilliant song, but it's just like, you look at this stuff and it's just like, none of this matters. I look at this, my dead dad, none of it matters. You know? I mean, it matters, but it doesn't. Does that make sense? Like, it's just like, I've said it so many times, be kind, be grateful, work hard. So I'm going to spread my dad's ashes. And I think that's part of that spiritual awakening they promised me. And man, I don't have any idea what I just talked about for the last hour. I don't know if this was interesting or if it was helpful or any of that stuff. I guess I never do. This is usually around the time I get real present and I'm like, fuck, did I overshare? I think the whole podcast is oversharing. But yeah, I'm home. And I'm grateful I got to pick my own family. You know, I have people. I'm going to DC. Well, I'm going to Maryland, but we're having a DC date. I'm super excited about that. I'm going to Maryland to see my family. Roger, Katie, Dave, the kids. And I'm grateful that I have people in my life that I got to choose as my family, that their love isn't conditional. You know, they're proud of me. They download my podcast. You don't even have to listen to it. Just fucking support it. You know, download it. They buy the book. They tell their friends to buy the book. They tell me they love me. When I fuck up, they tell me I'm still lovable. I'm still enough. And I guess that's, I don't know. If you're struggling with anything that I've mentioned in any of these podcasts, please email me anytime. KimKralspace@gmail.com. Please email me. I will send you resources, or I'll just tell you you're enough and I love you. You know what I mean? Like sometimes that's all you need to hear, but I'm just so grateful I'm home, man. And I finished the 12 steps. It was the hardest. It was like 2.5 years, almost 3 years, maybe 3 years, 3.5 years. I don't, it doesn't matter. 3.5 years. It was a long time. And it was a couple sponsors, a couple fellow travelers. I lost a few fellow travelers, or the people that you work the program with. Lost a few of them. But I did it. And I think I had that spiritual awakening. And I think it'll be the first of many. Wild, right? So that is why I'm one lucky broad. This whole thing, I'm one lucky broad. Oh, and I also decided I'm not going to, because I was like, what do we do with this box? I also have to research I think it's illegal just to dump a body in the ocean, even if it is on fire. That's not the right way to say it. The body won't be on fire. It's not whole, but they set it on fire. They cremated it. So I think it's illegal to dump cremated remains into the ocean, but people still do it. So I need to look that up. But I also was like, well, what do I do with this box that's like, and I decided I'm going to put a plant in it. I know it's super morbid, but you can't just throw that thing away. God, if you would have told me that, if you would have told me this 3 years ago, that I would want to save the box his remains were in and not throw him in a dumpster with, my throwing pee all over it. I don't know if it'd be my pee. But if you would have told me that, if you would have told me that this is where I would be, I would never have believed you. So I'm really, really grateful. I'm grateful that it was that bad growing up, because otherwise I don't think I went home recently, and I went back to Denver recently, and I saw that in real time, that if it wasn't that bad, it's easier just to live with it on your back than it is to turn around and look at it. And it was that bad for me. I had to turn around and look at it. Or otherwise I would have slit my wrists at one point in this life. Who knows if I will or not, one day at a time. Right. But that's a really dark way to end. But you know what? We're not going to end on that. We're going to end on a poop scoop. You ready? Here's a poop scoop. This is a fun palate cleanser before we get out of here. As always though, thank you so much for listening to this. I need this. Getting this stuff out, and it's so funny because it feels like a safe place, but it also is like, here, whole world, listen to this. But it does. It just feels, and the emails I get from you guys telling me that you get a lot out of my shares and my experience, strength, and hope. Just really, it validates me and makes me realize that what I'm doing is not fruitless. There's fruit for Buffy. That's a Buffy quote. Sorry. Well, she actually says no fruit for Buffy, but that's because they were saying what she was doing was fruitless. But I'm saying what I'm doing is not fruitless. So there's fruit for Buffy. I'm going to get out of here. But I'm going to do a poop scoop first. I have a few. You guys have sent me poop scoops. I promise you. I love now that I have a bunch of poop scoops in the queue. I keep having poop shit happen to me. Poop stuff happen to me. So I promise, but keep sending it. If you've pooped your pants, had a close call, sharted. I did a show last night, and this girl was like, I was talking about pooping her pants, and she goes, does shart count? And I was like, yes, because that's poop. Just because a shart's an accidental poop your pants. A shart is that you think you're farting, and then you poop your pants. It may not be the full poop, but it's still poop in your pants. I feel like I am the decider in all things pooping your pants, and I have ruled that yes, that's sharting is pooping your pants. Or if you have an embarrassing poop story that you did it somewhere really awful in public, I will listen to all of them and I will read them on air. This is not air, but on the show. I won't say your name if you don't want me to. In the email, if you want me to, you can say my name. Otherwise, I just won't use your name, just at a extreme caution. KymKralspace@gmail.com. Please send it to that email, KymKralspace@gmail.com. It just helps me keep more organized. Or you can just hit the email button on my Instagram, KymKral. So remember a couple weeks ago when I had that big poop that wouldn't go down the toilet, and I was like, what the fuck am I going to do? And I sent a text to my tribe, and they were like, just let it sit for a minute and it'll break up and then it'll go down. And I was like, okay, cool. And that worked. And then yesterday it happened again. And I let it sit for like 15 minutes, which is horrific. Especially in that 15 minutes, you usually forget that happened, right? Like you go off and do your own thing for a little bit, and then you go to the bathroom and you open the toilet and you just see that. And it's kind of jarring. Like you're like, oh my God. Because we're all kind of scared like a dead animal will be in our toilet, right? Are we all a little afraid? Like you see, like those shows should never show snakes or rats swimming in the toilet. It's just not an image you need to put in people's brains. Not for fear. It's not fear. It's just, oh, real quick sidebar. Last night I was in Santa Monica doing a show, and don't worry, we'll get back to the poop. But I was in Santa Monica, and I parked in one of the parking garages. I hate Halloween, dude. I hate Halloween. Can't wait for it to fucking be over. And I walk in the parking garage, and no one's around, and it's really like eerie. And the guy running the show had just told me that there's quite a bit of crime that's happening around that area now. And I was just like, oh God. So I had my mace out, and then I was going to take the stairs, but I had to go in the alleyway. And I walked in the alleyway, and there was a person dressed as the doll from Saw on a fucking tricycle, just staring at me. No one else around, just that person. And we just stared, and I just out loud went, Jesus Christ. And then I pulled up my mace so it was visible to whoever that was, and like just looked at him and turned and went to the elevator, because I was like, dude, you come near me, I will spray those little clown eyes and then I'll kick you in the throat, because your throat on that stupid tricycle is the same like is level to my knee. I will kick your ass in the throat. You know what I mean? I will kick you in the, but I hate Halloween. It was so scary. And then I got in there and I was just like, oh my God. And then, you know, that little like pig thing he wears? I love Saw. I love Saw. It's so funny how much I love scary movies. I just hate Halloween. I just think people think they have like the license to be a fucking asshole because they have a mask on. It's just like, that guy should, I'm a girl alone in a fucking parking garage. He was probably like, oh, it's fun, I'm scaring her, or her. I don't give a fuck. But like a normal person should have been like, oh, hi, I'm not dangerous, I don't mean to scare you. It's like, fuck you, man. I should have just maced that motherfucker. Okay, I will. I just don't appreciate, I don't like it. It was scary, and I got all the way to my car, and you know that little pig thing that when he abducts people, I was just like, oh my God, what if this is the real life Saw? I don't have the constitution to like cut out a key from that guy's stomach while eating my own arm and climbing through barbed wire. I don't have the constitution. Oh, okay. So I pooped the other day. I'll go back to that. So I pooped the other day, and I, what am I saying? Pooped the other day. I don't want to go down the toilet. So I let it go for like 15 minutes, and I came back and I wouldn't go down the toilet. And then I was like, oh, fuck. Everyone says that if it happens like this, you got to find something to break it up with. I don't have anything in my apartment that I like. I don't have a poop knife, which, you know, the events that have taken place the last few weeks have led me to believe that maybe I ought to purchase a poop knife. But where do you keep the poop knife? You know what I mean? You wash it off and you hang it up somewhere. I'm trying to meet a fella. Comes over, I'm like, oh, it's because I have big poops, so sometimes you got to use that knife to break it up. And I think some households actually have that. My friend Katie has went to school with a guy who had a poop knife. Great story. But I was like, okay, so I go in my kitchen and I'm like, well, what? And I was like, all right, well, what can I use to break up the poop, right? I don't have hangers. Like, I have hangers. That's not in my kitchen, but I have nice wooden hangers, because like 15 years ago, I went through this weird phase where I wanted to get rid of all my plastic and wire hangers so I could have wooden hangers so my closet would look nicer. I have no idea. I am happy I did it. It does look nice in there, but it is a weird OCD thing I decided to do 15 years ago. So I have no wire hangers. Otherwise, I just use a wire hanger. I had to do that as a child when my mom yelled at me and I cried breaking up my own poop. No wonder I have a podcast about this shit. So I was looking around and I was like, there's nothing in here that, like, whatever I use to break it up with, I have to throw it away. Like, there's nothing, like, I can't use like a knife and then wash it and then use it again. I will never be able to use that knife again. And I can't mix it in the drawer, because forever I will be like, which knife did I like dive into my poop? Like butter. Gross. Sorry. But then I realized I had just cut off. This is so gross. By the way, if you're the people have told me that they don't listen to podcasts because it gets real grim around this time because they have a queasy stomach. Go ahead and cut out here because it's going to get gross, or don't, because I know you're curious. So I had this corn on the cob. I can't eat corn on the cob off the cob because of my fake teeth. So I had cut all the corn off and then I'll put it, like when I first get the corn on cobs, I'll just cut it all off and then put it in a Tupperware, right? So I had the cob with no corn on it in like a bag that I was going to throw out. And I was like, this is hard enough that it probably will push through that poop. So I used the cob from the corn of the cob to break up the poop. And it was the most disgusting thing I've ever done in my whole life. It was so gross. I've done some really disgusting, questionable things in my life. Things that like I have told all of you about. I've picked my own poop out of a toilet and put it in a trash can in fear of it plugging the toilet. I have done a lot that I should be not as proud of as I am. But breaking that poop up with that corn on the cob husk, is it a husk? I don't know. Was by far the most disgusting thing I've ever done or witnessed in my life. And then I pulled it out and I was like, I don't know what to do with this. I can't walk from my bathroom to my kitchen to the trash, but I can't just put this in the bathroom trash. And then there's that stupid voice in my head. You know that voice that when you walk, you're like at a high building and you're walking by the edge and that voice goes, jump. And I don't think that happens to everybody, because I said that on a set a couple of weeks ago where they told us we can run out on the field. We're at a football field in the middle of the night, and they said we weren't allowed to run out on the field. And I was like, oh, that part of my brain that tells me to jump when I'm on a high cliff is telling me to run off into the field. And the PA was like, what? I don't have that part of my brain. And then the three people I was standing with were like, what? I don't have the part of my brain that goes, jump, just jump. Am I the only one? So that part goes, smell the corn on the cob. I'm like, it's going to smell like poop. We're not smelling it. And then that brain goes, smell it. And I was like, no. And it goes, smell it. And then I grabbed a bunch of tissue, wrapped up the corn on the cob, and ran in and just threw it in the trash can. And then I was like, immediately went, well, now I have tomorrow's poop scoop. Everyone else who has emailed me their stories will be damned. Just kidding. I'll tell them next week. As soon as I stop having poop stories, I get to your poop stories. I feel like we covered a lot in this episode. It's nice to be back. It's nice to get an episode out. I appreciate your patience with last week. I was just too fucking... I felt like I had screamed into a barrel for 5 hours. You know, when you work, like I compared it to working wing night at Big Wangs, but like think about like the worst job you've ever had and then the worst day of that job, you know, where you feel like your ears are ringing because you feel like you've just been screaming at nothing for 5 hours. You're emotionally and physically exhausted. You get home, you're questioning all of your life decisions. How the fuck did you get here? Should you run away and just like change your name and leave it all? Or should you just pioneer on through, or what do you do? And you don't know if you want to just scream, laugh, stare at the wall. That's how I felt when I came back from seeing people in Denver. Day 1.5, my brain goes, don't worry. As soon as we get home, we can alternate from crying and screaming into a pillow for as long as you want. So I'd just gotten back like 12 hours when the last crawl space was supposed to be out. And I was like, you know what? I'm filling up my cup and I'm doing some self-care. So this is your reminder, my friends, that when you feel overwhelmed or whatever, like you just can't do anymore, fill up your cup, say no, take care of yourself. That birthday party, that show, that whatever. There's nothing that happens that is worth your self-love and self-care, you know, like your health. Like people get mad if you're like, I can't make it to that birthday party. I'm having a hard time. I used to work with a guy who used to get so mad if I didn't show, like send me paragraphs of stuff. And I was like, dude, haven't you, like, I know you're codependent, but I'm learning not to be. It's just like nothing is worth your health, mental, physical, spiritual. Even a podcast. I love this podcast. I love doing it, but this is your reminder that last week I took care of myself. So sometimes always. So your reminder to be nice to yourself and take care of yourself. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you, everyone. We will be getting a bunch. I know I promise this every week, guys. I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm a one-woman shop. I'm doing the best I can, but Patreon. I have all my Patreon shit uploaded and ready to go. I just am waiting for it all to download, which just will take 16 years, and then I get so mad at technology. But I have a Patreon. I have a bunch of bonus episodes. I got 2, maybe 3 of my sets that I will be putting up on there too. I have a book if you want to buy that. It's Confessions of a Recovering Party Girl. I would love your support. And any way you can give it, that'd be awesome. You can get a signed copy on my website, kimkral.com, or you can just go to Amazon and put in Confessions of a Recovering Party Girl. Or you can join my Patreon. Or you can just keep listening here and download every week and leave me a rating and a review. I haven't had one of those in a long time. So if you haven't done that yet and you're like, shit, I need to do that, will you please do that now? I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. I'm really grateful for this outlet, and I'm grateful for your voices when you email me, and I'm grateful that you listen to me and you get something out of this shit, because I get a lot out of it. All right. I will talk to you guys next week. Be safe, be kind, be grateful. Bye. Kral space, I don't care, Kral.